If you look at the culture of previous generations, specifically the 60s and 70s, but also to a lesser degree, even the 80s, one thing that stands out to me is how much fun they seem to have. How much they seem to be acting on intuition and really living in their bodies. They seem to really feel their experiences. Now, I won't say that their indulgence in sex, drugs, and really good rock and roll was not without its negative consequences. But looking back in time, as a contrast to the world we now find ourselves in, on one level, it seemed to allow them a carefree, intuitive and visceral experience of life. It seemed to allow them a lack of self-consciousness and self-judgment that is the exact opposite of the anxiety and depression-inducing, crippling self-awareness and emotional micromanagement that has become the mental toxic sludge that many young people don't even realise that they are burdened by today. One negative externality of the increased feminisation of our society and institutions has been the industrialisation of scolding, shaming, excessive nitpicking and emotional micromanagement as a method for social and political change and even psychological reshaping of young people. But as Jordan Peterson has explained, extreme self-consciousness is cognitively little different from depression. This means that you can hamstring a person with self-awareness. You can nitpick the vitality out of a person and even generations of people. You can hyper-focus on negatives so much that you drain people of the confidence and energy to continue creating positives. And at scale, this anxiety and depression-inducing self-awareness and self-critique has profound and far-reaching externalities, even having population-level effects on relationships, marriages, and ultimately even birth rates. In 2012, the total birth rate of Australia was 1.93, so just teetering on the edge of replacement levels. But that has now trended down to 1.7 in 2021, and then in 2022 even further down to 1.63, well beyond any obscurity about the question of whether or not we are at replacement birth levels. Interestingly, the ABS also keeps discrete data on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island populations, who in the same period have actually trended up. In 2012, they were 2.29, 2021 were 2.34, and then finally in 2022 up to 2.35 compared to 1.63 national average. So not only were they consistently above the Australian national average, but they have been trending upwards during the same period that all non-Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander births have been falling off a cliff. So I ask the question, which groups have their negatives and worst examples culturally subsidised and protected from criticism, and so are able to still live, feel and act in a less self-conscious and more intuitive state? And which groups have every negative, every crime and every worst example amplified, magnified and even outright fabricated, inflicting collectively on them a depressed state of constant judgmental self-awareness, emotional micromanagement and guilt trips for hyperinflated and even imaginary crimes? And does this reflect and even contribute to who in society is having above replacement births? And is this indicative of which groups will be in the majority democratic power in 50 or even 100 years? The process of creating, repeating and reinforcing the stories we tell about ourselves and each other is what we call social construction or myth-making. We relate to the world emotionally through our judgments, and our judgments are crafted by the stories we tell and reinforce. So this social myth-making allows its adepts the ability to craft people's perceptions. This myth-making provides them a psychological victory over people, and this then allows them the ability to craft society's status signals. And in turn, this ability to craft societal status signals gives them the ability to direct people's attention and behaviour, and ultimately the future of society itself. Why? Because many people act or don't act upon status signals. People's behaviour will change for better or worse because the drive for status is one of the most fundamental and powerful drivers of human behaviour. So, status signals drive human behaviour, and social construction defines the status signals. And this can be done for a society's long-term good, or it can be done for personal profit at the expense of people's long-term good. Our minds are crucial to decide, to sort and to judge, but our emotions give power to our judgments and allow our bodies to take action. There is a recurring theme of a supervillain team where one is a tiny brain who sits on the shoulders of a brute. For a reason, one decides and the other actions the decisions. They need each other because a body without a mind is directionless, and a mind without body is weak and impotent. But if you want to kill the mind, one way is to cripple it with self-awareness. Induce in it anxiety and depression through relentless criticism so that it chains itself with its own constant judgment. And with the mind crippled through self-doubt and pathological second-guessing, the body will either stand dormant or it will wander aimlessly off a cliff, much like non-Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander birth rates. Because the truth is that there is power in being able to live in our bodies when appropriate. There is power in being able to feel life. There is power in being unapologetic in who you are, where you came from, and what you want. Yes, this power is not without its own dangers, and its excesses must be constrained by responsibility, maturity, and training. But powerless and ineffectiveness from pathological overthinking, self-doubt, nitpicking, and self-consciousness are not virtues, because for good to exist, it is something that must be actioned. Morality that has no capacity to be manifested in the world through action is indistinguishable from morality that doesn't exist. Inflicting this crippling self-judgment on any person or group of people is psychological abuse, and at civilisational scale, its effects are no different from warfare.